Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we had on tennis media personality Liza West. Definitely recommend listening to that episode if you haven't. A lot of great stuff in there. And this week we're going to be giving you a recap of what happened during the first week of the Australian Open. All right, Aidan, there's a lot to unpack here. So why don't we start off by doing some hits and misses of the week? What's your hit and what's your miss?
I'd say my hit is all the next gen finalists. 7 out of 8 of them played in the Australian Open this week. Van Ash was the only one that didn't, and only two of them lost in round one. And both of them kind of have good excuses. Like Shang retired; he's still dealing with an injury that he kind of had during the next gen finals. And Basaveretti got a set off of Djokovic. He lost to him, but he got a set off him. So that's an accomplishment. And then you look at how the other guys did. Mensik, Tian, and Fonseca all beat top 10 guys in their runs. And Mickelson and Tian both made the round of 16. So overall, just an excellent job by those guys. And kind of cool to see that these guys really are the next gen of players that are going to be at the top of the game.
Yeah, that's definitely a big hit. And it's like you said, it's a good fortune that tennis is in good hands for the future. You know, they're already starting to make a name for themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And then on my miss side, I got to say Djokovic's on court interviews are my miss, where Channel 9 in Australia, which is the channel that's covering the event and is the main broadcast, one of their broadcasts essentially mocked Djokovic fans, saying like he's overrated and he's a has been. And then Djokovic responded by essentially, when he was asked to do an interview after his match, he just said, "Thank you for the fans. I'm not going to do an interview." And then he posted a video later explaining why, that it was in response to this broadcaster kind of insulting him essentially. And to me, it's kind of a situation where, yes, you can make comments like that if you're a broadcaster, but you got to also understand that interviewing these players kind of is a privilege. And you're getting the chance to broadcast the event and be the main broadcaster. And if you make comments like this, you're going to lose the privilege of interviewing these guys because they don't want to have to talk to people that have insulted them. So I think it's a kind of double thing where you can make the comments, but you have to understand what the repercussions are.
100% agree. You know, I agree with Djokovic on this because it's one thing to mock the fans, but then he also called them overrated and like kick them out. Like those are a little offensive and personal, which, you know, Djokovic, he's not going to take that. So I stand by him. And he said he wasn't going to do it until he got the apology. And he actually did get the apology, like I think a couple days later, like 24 to 48 hours later. And the guy, what was his name? Tony
Tony Jones,
Jones. It was such a shallow apology. You know, it wasn't like, "Hey, I'm sorry for doing this." It was, "I'm sorry you felt the way you did because I said this," or you know, just
yeah,
kind of a
not a real
BS apology.
apology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not a real apology at all. And I don't know, definitely a miss on Tony's part because it impacted the broadcast. Like in the match, you know, people are expecting to watch the post-match interview or post-match like conference, and Djokovic didn't give them that satisfaction, which, you know, like you said, you make your bed, you got to sleep in it.
100%. 100%.
My hit this week is the new coaches pods. So I thought it was pretty interesting. They're like on court, and while I don't necessarily agree with it, like I kind of like the camp where coaching stays out of tennis, or at least it's not as obvious. I think it's pretty cool to see tennis innovating and evolving in ways that like are keeping the game fresh, you know? Like I also think this will be something that's unique to the Australian Open, but the other slams won't follow it. So it'll be like, oh, the Australian Open is known for having coaches pods, whereas Wimbledon, you're never going to see that. That's like the quintessential traditional tennis tournament. You're not going to have on-court tennis coaching pods. So I think this will like kind of add some flair to the Australian Open, something that's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely interesting when you see different tournaments taking a unique approach to it. And it's also the question of like what tournaments can even implement this. Like how many have actually big enough courts where you can put a coaching pod
Right.
on the court. So definitely could be end up being a unique thing to the Australian Open, maybe a couple of the tournaments.
Yeah, I'm sure Tsitsipas would have benefited from this greatly like earlier on in his career instead of having to do signals and stuff with his dad. But anyway, my miss was someone posted a picture on Instagram this week with Kokonakis and Draper, that scoreline posted on top when Kokonakis was up in that match. And then on the bottom, posted the scoreline of the Kokonakis Murray match back in 2023 when he was also up in the fourth set. And both these matches, Kokonakis was just a couple points from winning. And it was funny because they showed a snapshot in time of like the the scoreline and then Kokonakis smiling and celebrating. And then the caption was Kokonakis lost both of these matches. And then you scroll to the right and it's the end scoreline and him just like devastated, shaking hands at the net. So this is a miss because Kokonakis has never made it past the second round at the Australian Open. And this is his home tournament, so it's kind of sad and has had the opportunities to, like literally just a couple points away.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of an aggressive move, right? Like it sucks already for Kokonakis that he hasn't been able to finish those matches. Just say, someone reminding him just feels kind of bad, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I believe it was the Australian Open, like their Instagram account that posted it.
That's so aggressive from
Yeah, yeah.
his home team.
Yeah, yeah. Gotta say, they've done a good job, like Eliza said last week, of covering it so far. Like they're putting out a bunch of content,
100%. Well, it's their 2 weeks of the year that they're really
right?
fully relevant. Other times of the year they'll post and stuff, but
Hmm.
now is their time.
Yeah. So let's get in. Let's start with some early upsets. I mean, which one to you stood out the most? Because we have a few here.
I mean, I got to say, probably the one that shocked me the most was Fonseca taking out Rublev in three. I mean, that one just, I don't think anybody predicted.
Yeah, 100%. When I saw it, it's one thing because Fonseca's been doing well and stuff. He's been impressive, but to play Rublev and to beat him, that's a whole nother kind of aspect because you figure Rublev, veteran guy, been in the slams before. Like, yeah, sure, Fonseca may win a set or two off him, but I thought for sure Rublev was going to win the match.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the experience Rublev has in these big tournaments, you would think that would play a bigger impact. And it's kind of funny because experience, in my mind, has been a large factor in this tournament for some players. Where you see guys like Monfils playing really well, probably because he's been in these experience these situations before, and then you have other guys doing really well that have no experience, and you're like, well, how are they able to defeat all these top guys? And it's just sometimes it plays a role, sometimes it doesn't, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And that's such a bummer for Rublev too, because he's already been struggling. And to draw Fonseca first round of a slam is just kind of bad luck.
Yeah, Fonseca was red hot too. I think he had like a
Oh,
16 match win streak going in.
yeah, yeah. I saw he hasn't lost since November. But yeah, this would have been good for Rublev to kind of either have someone a lot worse or a qualifier to build up that confidence and kind of get back to where he's been.
Yeah,
But doesn't always work that way.
100%, 100%.
Yeah. So the other upset that I was kind of, I mean, I was surprised, but not as surprised was Mickelson taking out Tsitsipas. Because I feel like in hindsight, it's pretty obvious. But when you're looking at the draw, you're thinking back to experience. Tsitsipas has been to the final here. Like this, he's had great success. And then Mickelson has not always been that consistent. He's had good tournaments, but never thought that he would take out Tsitsipas first round.
Yeah, and Mickelson's just a young guy. You kind of
Yeah.
look at the young guy and you're like, okay, I don't know how he's going to do, especially in like the 5 set format. How's that going to play a role here? But it was definitely interesting to see that Tsitsipas lost here. But like you said, hindsight, you're like Mickelson's been playing very well. Tsitsipas hasn't necessarily been playing as well as we've seen in the past. But it was kind of funny because after the match, he did say that he feels as though he is a better player now than he was maybe a couple years ago when he was having this success. It's just that he maybe hasn't improved as much as the game around him has improved.
Yeah, just kind of going off that, he also said that the game has become much more physical. He said that there's a lot more power in today's game. Like the younger guys have a lot more power than when he was young and when he was starting off. And so he's got to make the adjustments. Like he's going through it now. Rublev's going through it. Medvedev is going through it. These guys have to get back to the drawing board and adapt to this new generation of tennis players.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard an argument about the whole big three era, big four era, was that the game actually became a lot less physical while they were at the top because they were such great tacticians
Mm.
that they didn't need to hit through people to beat them. And people were like, "Oh, that's the best way to play. That's clearly how people win all these tournaments is by playing tactical and not hitting just through the ball." And then now we're kind of seeing Alcaraz and Sinner come on where they just crush the ball. And that's clearly the best style today. And so now people are watching that being like, okay, I just need to kill my shots. And that's how I'll win these tournaments. And so maybe Tsitsipas actually was more fitted to that other style.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, the technology is just getting better and better too. So I think with the new racket technology, I think they're gonna have to slow down the courts in order for this sport to be watchable for fans because it may go back to, way back when the tennis points were a couple points. Like we like seeing the long rallies, or at least I do. I don't know. How do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, there's two camps, right? I mean, you already see in women's tennis there's a lot more long points. So it's just a different style of game. Like you were saying with the slower courts, it's yeah, maybe they'll slow them down again, but what can you do then? Do you just does that just you're just favoring other people, right?
Yeah,
Like we
that's
were saying,
true.
it's just
Yeah.
a different style of game.
Yeah. I guess it wouldn't really be fair to just slow down for everybody because some people's games really depend on that fast court. Like
Yeah, you
take
slow
center,
down
that
the
might
court.
even it out.
Does Rude become the best player in the world if you just slow down the court?
Yeah, we'll see. Speaking of Rude, let's get to him. I thought he was going to get upset first round. He barely squeaked by Munar. Kind of made me nervous because, I had him advancing in our bracket challenge. But then, sure enough, goes out round two to Mensik. I had actually predicted this one. I feel like this wasn't as much as of an upset as we all think.
Yeah, the loss to Mensick I think was pretty predictable. I think I had that in my bracket too.
Hmm.
I was worried though. I was like, is he going to lose first round?
Yeah.
But yeah, it just keeps going back. I think we talked about this last year of Rude. Just we'll see how he does in the clay season. It's
Hmm.
impossible to predict where he's going to end the year until you see how does he do in the clay season because that's his time. That's where he plays well. And outside of there, you're kind of like, if he wins a round or two, it's decent.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of accepted that too. Like I've followed him on social media. He's oh, my time in Australia was cut short, but still enjoyed it, blah blah blah. He's out there to play tennis. I don't think he was really seriously trying to win this tournament. And I think he
Well,
knew
he
it.
was
I think he
trying
knew
to, I
it.
think,
I
but
think he knew it
yeah,
deep down,
I agree. I think he like he would think he was trying obviously to win the tournament, but like he knew that he didn't have like a good chance.
That's yeah, better
He
said. He
didn't
was
really
definitely
have,
trying.
yeah. Like I would say he wasn't in my mind. He wasn't one of the top 10 contenders to win the tournament.
Agreed. Agreed. So he accepted it.
Yeah.
That's a better way to put it.
And then actually, before we move into round two, I do want to mention that Dimitrov also having to deal with an injury here, which is just a bummer to me because you see how some of the other older players did, at least like winning a round or two, or Monfils making it pretty far. It's tough to see a guy that is a little bit older, but still has a relatively high peak, and just dealing with an injury again, just like he did at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I know. I really thought, after he had pulled out last tournament that maybe this was something minor and he would get arrested up for this, but unfortunately that's just not the case.
100%. 100%.
But yeah, I think this might be the beginning of the end.
We'll see. We'll see. I
Yeah.
mean, speaking of beginning of the end, Medvedev lost to Tien in round two. That was a match that I was pretty shocked by, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely shocked too. I feel like I was more so shocked by Medvedev's antics on the court, how he just kind of, lost it. And I feel like Tien really took advantage of that. Like as a young player, recognizing how to get under your opponent's skin, especially when he's so much older. Credit to him for doing that.
Yeah, I just don't know what's going on with Medvedev, really. I mean, in the first round, he went 5 sets with a guy that was like pretty much unknown.
Hmm.
And now in this round, he loses in five to Tien. And it's like, has he just lost all confidence in his game? Maybe, because you have to think, right? When you're a young player coming up, especially Medvedev's level, he's like, I have the ability to be the best player in the world. I have the ability to be the best player in the world. He gets to that level. He was the number one player in the world, and then he's maybe not the top player, but he still has the potential to be these guys. He goes in, he's a threat, and then you see someone like Sinner come along and just kind of has dominated Medvedev, and now Medvedev's like, what? I guess I'm just not as good as I thought I was. And if you don't have that confidence in your game that you can beat every player, that's got to take away from how you play massively. And maybe he's just started to play too safe against these guys, and that could be what leads to these early losses.
Yeah, I just don't see him having any weapons or at least areas that he can exploit other players. Like the consistency only works when you play guys like he played in the first round, but it'll eventually catch up to you. Couple that with also the off-court stuff that's going on in his life. He just had a kid, so maybe his priorities have been elsewhere. Maybe he hasn't really been able to practice as much. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's lacking sleep with the newborn child. I don't know, man. I let's check back in a couple months.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when the Masters 1000 tournaments start rolling
Mm-hmm.
around.
Mm-hmm. All right, how about Monfils beating Fritz?
Another one where I was pretty surprised, but honestly, I
You were
look at it.
pleasantly surprised, weren't you?
I mean, I kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm not
Yeah, you
the
said
biggest
I'm.
Fritz fan,
No, I
but
was bummed. I was real bummed.
to me, it's kind of funny because this is honestly where Fritz normally finishes. Last year, he did better than this. He made the quarterfinals. And this year, he goes back to losing in the round three. And maybe he just hasn't taken that step up that people hope for after making the final of the US Open and loses to Monfils. Like, if this had happened maybe 2 years ago, we'd be like, okay, whatever. Now we have higher expectations on Fritz, but he just didn't deliver on them.
Yeah, maybe he's more of a like end of the year type player. Like we've had Tommy Paul have success at the Australian Open. We've had Ben Shelton have success. Maybe this just isn't Fritz's tournament, He's playing in Australia, it's far from home. I don't know. I really can't say, but Monfils really surprised me here.
Yeah. Maybe he's one of those guys like Tiafoe where he's like, okay, rest of the year doesn't matter. It just matters how I do at the US Open.
Yeah, maybe. Speaking of Tommy Paul, though, I saw he is number 8 right now in the live rankings.
I saw that. I think I saw the same clip you did,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's necessarily true right now in between rounds. I think
Uh,
it's such a brief thing because he's really close with Djokovic.
mhm.
It's like when when his match finishes, he's ahead of Djokovic, and then
Oh, because
when
it's out.
Djokovic's
Yeah.
match finishes, he goes back behind him. But he's still right there, and like
Yeah.
he could jump a couple of guys if he uh, does well in the next couple rounds. And I think he has a chance to.
So you think Tommy Paul can beat Zverev tonight?
I think he has a chance to. I mean, nobody really thought that Fritz was going to beat Zverev at the U.S. Open. I don't think, and I think it's a better chance than playing someone like an Alcaraz or a Sinner. To be honest,
Speaking of Zverev, I feel like he's kind of flown under the radar in this tournament. Like he's just been getting it done.
100%. I completely agree. I think Zverev has done a great job of not being in any headlines, just
Yeah.
because he's just gone out there, done his job, got it done, and has performed how he's been expected to. But the weird thing is like you look at where Sinner was yesterday against Runa, where he was kind of struggling with the conditions out there. And you wonder, okay, if that starts to weigh on Sinner, if it starts getting hotter out there, will that impact how he's able to play? Could he get eliminated by someone like a Deminar?
hmm
We'll see. And if that's the case, is Alcaraz now the favorite or is Zverev the favorite?
Yeah, good point. Um, I don't really know. I feel like Zverev hasn't been tested. Like we know Alcaraz is in great physical shape. Like, did you see him out there? He looks phenomenal. Whereas Zverev, I feel like you can't really judge whether or not he's in that shape. And, I think, like you said, Tommy Paul and Deminar are guys that they're grinders. So this climate, the warm conditions, and like just long matches really favor them, I think, over the long term.
100%. Yeah, I think just that physical fitness is going to be
hmm
massive.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some headlines. I think one of the biggest ones so far is Deminar reaching his first Australian Open quarterfinal. Like this is big for him.
Yeah, honestly, it's sick to see him at his home tournament making a big run like this. And like I was just saying, I think he has a chance to make it even further. Yes, he has a tough draw. He's playing Sinner, but if he can exploit the fact that Sinner maybe isn't in the best physical shape right now, whether it's from just a lack of fitness or whether he's just under the weather or he's just not used to the heat in Australia, maybe Deminar can pull something off if he can push Sinner to make the match more difficult.
Yeah, this is the only circumstance or the only scenario where I actually think Deminar has a chance. Like put them in any other tournament, any other time of the year, Sinner, no doubt. This one, I'm actually thinking Deminar could have a chance just because of the conditions and the fact that Sinner had to take that medical time out against Runa. Like I really don't know what it was, just fatigue or like you said, maybe an illness, something there. But whew, Deminar, this is the chance. This is if you're ever going to capitalize on a moment, it's got to be now.
100%. And on that same kind of path, capitalizing on a moment, I can't believe how Sonego has been doing this tournament.
Yeah. Also, just from the rafters, like out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no question been a much easier draw than what he was expecting
Hmm.
because you look at who he's played compared to who a lot of the other guys have played. He made the quarterfinals without playing a single seeded player.
Wow, luck of the draw, baby.
And he could make the semis without having played a guy in the top 20 because he plays
Oh,
Shelton this
Shelton.
round,
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
which is just
Crazy.
such an insane thing to happen.
Yeah, and then you have Djokovic Alcaraz playing now. Like
Exactly. Djokovic
it's just
Alcaraz, you have Zverev Paul, you have
yeah.
uh uh Deminard
Sinner,
Sinner.
yeah. Wow.
And it's like, okay, you have three quarterfinal matchups that were like predictable. I think I actually have in our bracket challenge that we did, I had all three of those
Uh-huh.
quarterfinals. And then this
Wow.
one I had neither of the
Yeah.
players.
Yeah, I know. That one was the biggest shock. But
Yeah.
what do you think Sonego has the upper hand against Shelton, or do you think Shelton's gonna edge him?
I mean, I'm getting into bet of the week a little early here, but
Oh,
I'm
okay,
actually betting
okay.
on Sonego.
Yeah.
But I do think that Shelton, like I understand why Shelton is favored, but it's weird because Shelton has had a very easy draw too.
Hmm.
Like his top opponent he's played is Musetti, so he will have made the semis if he beats Sonego with without playing a player in the top 15.
Yeah. And he had a retirement against Monfils too.
Exactly. It's like, okay, that's just such a great luck of the draw for him.
Speaking of Sonego, I didn't realize that he was 29 years old. I thought he was way younger than that.
No, yeah, he's been
Did
around for
you?
a while.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I knew he was at least like a quite a bit older than
Hmm.
Musetti.
Yeah, because I was looking into it, like, oh, he, put an end to the next gen players runs like Fonseca and Tien. I'm like, oh, well, didn't realize that he was 29 doing that. I thought he was still young,
No, yeah,
like
I
early
think
20s.
to an extent he's an example of the experience playing a role where
Hmm.
he's like, okay, I don't necessarily have to play like Alcaraz to beat these guys. They're still young, they're still a little inexperienced. I can maybe play a little bit safer and trust that my experience will get me there. And for him, it worked.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Shout out Lebanon here because Habib became the first Lebanese player to win a Grand Slam match, and he did it against Yunchaketi Boo. Um, I in our bracket, I knew Boo. I've heard of him before, but not Habib. So this was just kind of over name recognition. I don't think anyone actually had Habib winning first round.
I kind of went the same way. Like I've
Yeah,
seen Boo in tournaments
yeah.
before, but Habib was an unknown name. But props to him for getting it done.
Yeah, props. Moving on. All right, Opelka. He followed up his Brisbane final run and his win over Djokovic with a first round win, but then he did fall to Mahac in the second round. And even though he only made it past the first round, I still think this is a pretty good result for him, having been out of the game for 2 years, and this is his first Grand Slam back. And he suffered injury back in Brisbane last week too.
100%. Yeah, I think great job from him. Honestly, this game gave me a little bit more of a confidence in Mahac. I was like, okay, Mahac is playing pretty well. And then he went into that Djokovic match, and everyone I think was looking at that match to see kind of the first true test of where Djokovic was at. And Mahac got beaten in straight sets, and you're like, okay, I guess Djokovic is still pretty good.
Yeah. It is crazy to see how big matchups play in tennis because you have Opelka beating Djokovic, and then you have Djokovic beating Mahac, and then Mahac beating Opelka.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those matchup differences. But I think, yeah, like you said, overall, great job by Opelka. Did a great job in Brisbane. Gets at least around here, like that's something for his comeback, and hopefully he's able to progress as the year goes on.
Yeah, small wins. Got to stack them. All right, Nishikori, he won his first round after saving two match points and down two sets against Montero. And fun fact, this was his first Australian win since 2019.
Jesus, this was 6 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So he wasn't he like the king of five setters or something? He had a better
I
stat.
believe he's 8-1.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think the only time he lost a five setter at the Australian Open was to Federer in 2017, and that year Federer went on to win the title. Obviously,
Ooh, all right. So another headline we have is Leonard Tien became the youngest man to reach the round of 16 since Nadal did it in 2005.
nice, yeah,
He's 19.
pretty nuts. Like we said, that next gen is looking dangerous.
hmm I did not see Tien making a run in the Australian Open.
Well,
I think
I think we all saw him out in round two to Medvedev,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. So I feel like anything after is he's playing with the house's money.
100%, 100%.
And then just a little shout out to us. We had double bet of the week hit last week. I had Bruno over Berrettini. You had Morojan headhunting Tiafo.
Let's go.
Boom.
That
Yeah.
was nice.
So
I was like, I just think he's gonna do another one, another big upset for Morojan.
yeah, yeah, I know. Well, was it a big upset though?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because I think Morojan actually has like an even record against top 10 opponents in his ATP career, which is
That's
crazy
crazy.
given the fact that he's never like come close to the top
Yeah,
10.
yeah, I know. All right, let's talk some walkovers because there's been quite a few. And a couple episodes ago, I did mention that there was an abnormal amount of walkovers and over two tournaments. Here we have four right off the bat. And maybe I'm just noticing it now, but this does seem fairly high for a Grand Slam.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were definitely a few that were just due to conditions. Like we've seen how tough the Australian Open can be. And you look at someone like Draper retiring against
hmm
Alcaraz, he had played three five setters going into that match. And Alcaraz is not going to give you a break
Yeah.
in his match. So I think that's kind of just an exhaustion retirement.
Yeah, I think it was a hip actually. So I was watching the match and Draper was just getting pushed to deuce every single time on serve, was having a really tough time. And I was about to text in our group chat that, if there was a line to take the over on how many times Draper throws up or whether or not he vomits this match, like I would hammer that. But I didn't because I thought that was a little inconsiderate. And when I was looking into it after, apparently he's been suffering a hip injury that like didn't really heal since last season. So I think that's a better sign than him just like retiring out of exhaustion.
Well, I think it kind of plays into it,
It
right? It's
plays
like
into it, yeah.
if you're fresh, you can play with a
hmm
injured hip. If you've already had like 12 hours on court going into your fourth match, it's going to be a lot more difficult to play with some sort of injury.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And we already touched on Dimitrov. That was unfortunate. First round walkover. Monfils just retired against Shelton too, and they played like three grueling sets. I all went to tiebreakers too. And you had Monfils just kind of, my back hurts. I'm done. Like it was just kind of a split second decision, it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's maybe one of those guys that's going to hide it a little bit better than some other guys will.
hmm
It kind of almost feels like some players, when they're going to retire, almost give hints like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not feeling great, guys. Is there
You know,
what can I
you
do about this? I'll have a medical timeout. Monfils was a little bit more like, okay, I'm going to hide this because I'm a little older and I don't want to
mhm.
give away that I'm feeling not great. And then he's like, okay, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, yeah, and this kind of goes back into what he's 38, and
Yeah,
he even said he's like, I'm not trying to win this tournament. I'm just trying to have fun, play some tennis, support my wife who's playing. So he's at peace with where he is.
100%. Yeah.
And then we have the king of walkovers, or the king, yeah, Lehechka. I don't even know what you want to call it. The luckiest man alive. I think he
Ah, the
had
king
like
of walkovers.
the the king of walkovers. He had what, 3 out of 4 of his last matches
Yeah, I think he had
walkover
like three in a
against him.
row, right? Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And this was Gaston, so I didn't really follow exactly what happened, but
Yeah,
whatever.
just
Lahatchi
funny to see
advance,
Lasky getting
yeah.
another walkover.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But
All right.
anyway, let's set up who we're talking about here in the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to be the most interesting match? Because I think Djokovic Alcaraz. Like this could potentially be the match of the tournament right here.
I mean, I think that'll be the most fun match to watch. I think the most interesting match is Shelton Sonego, to be honest, because it's like either one of those guys gets out, you're like, damn man, that guy got pretty lucky,
Hmm.
especially
Yeah.
if it's Sonego.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know. All
But
right. Sinner Deminar we touched on, but you know, this could
yeah,
go not either way, but I'd say 80-20, 80%
yeah,
Sinner,
no, I'd say honestly, even like 70-30, given how Sinner
70-30.
looked in that
Wow.
match. But like as you were saying earlier, in any other tournament, it's like 90-10.
Hmm. Yeah. So you said you had 3 out of the 4 of these.
Yeah, I predicted
That's
Tommy
good.
Paul Zverev, Djokovic Alcaraz, and Sinner Deminar, but I think I had like I don't know, probably Medvedev, maybe Fritz or
Yeah.
someone in there. I don't know who was in that one, but it definitely wasn't Shelton and Sonego.
Yeah, I got too cheeky. I had Lehechka beating Djokovic. I
Ooh,
cannot. I know. I know. I just I wanted to
you
be
got to
right
take the
about
edgy
Djokovic.
picks. You got to take the edgy picks. If you
Yeah,
go too
yeah,
safe, it's like you're never going to be right.
yeah.
But anyway, that sounds like what we're looking for in these next few days. We got the quarterfinals and then obviously last couple rounds. But anyway, you ready to hop into segments here?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Alrighty. What's new in tennis? What did you see this week?
I saw something insane. So the Australian Open is hosting a pickleball slam, January 24th to January 26th. This is the first professional pickleball tournament that's like considered a grand slam or during a grand slam. There's $100,000 in prize money. They're turning court 3 into like a full-on pickleball court. And the head of the tournament was saying that this is good. This symbolizes our investment into the sport. I personally hate this. I think you need to keep tennis and pickleball separate in this instance. I'm all for having a couple courts at these Grand Slams, pickleball to like for people to try, for fun. I remember at the US Open they had that. At the French Open they had pickleball. It's just like you sub in for a couple points and play and have fun. But to make this part of a Grand Slam is making me sick to my stomach here. Pickleball is like without a doubt, it's a professional sport now. People are doing it, but they have their own tournaments. Don't make an Australian Open Grand Slam pickleball tournament. Don't do that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get where the $100,000 prize pool is coming from. To be honest, like I've never watched pickleball on TV. I don't know if they're getting that many fans to come in to watch the sport. I don't know how many sponsors they have. So just one of those situations where you're like, okay, where's the money coming from?
Oh, what would be really unfortunate if they were subsidizing this prize money with like the tennis,
Like the
like they,
WNBA with the NBA.
yeah, yeah, like they took out $100,000 from prize money of the tennis players and gave it to, these wiffle ball, cardboard Tupperware hitting.
Yeah, I don't want to go too aggressive on the pickleball, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't
All right.
know. I don't know where it's coming from.
What about you? What did you see this week?
Uh, I kind of have an update on last week's What's New, which was Medvedev breaking the net camera and kind of just acting out in his matches here at the Australian Open. And it turns out he was actually fined $76,000,
Whoa.
which is pretty massive. I remember last week you said like the max was 50,000 or something like that. So
Hmm.
he ended up going over that, and it just leaves the question like, is this fair? Like, I guess he just has to get control over his emotions, and it feels like when he was playing better, he was at least a bit more bottled up in the matches. Like he still had his outbursts, but I guess that kind of goes hand in hand, right? Like you're playing better, you're less likely to get angry. So that's kind of a big bummer for him. 76 grand is a lot of money, but just I guess it's understanding the repercussions of your actions. It's also a bummer because he could fall actually as low as number 8 in the rankings after this tournament. It's unlikely because I
Mhm.
think Deminar, Djokovic, and Tommy Paul would all have to win. But either way, it's not a good sign for the trajectory of his career. He spent the last I think 6 years in the top 8 in the rankings. So if he fell out of the top 8, the top 10, it would definitely be a negative sign for where his playing level is going.
Yeah, most definitely. And I feel like these outbursts are kind of reminding me of like little kid temper tantrums. Like he's throwing his racket across the court. He's like verbally abusing the umpire and being sassy, smashing the net camera. Like this is something that you see out of a child. Like his behavior is becoming erratic, and I think it's because of the frustration on the court. Like he needs to get that figured out. It's like Rublev, you know. It was one thing to be like, oh, haha, like Rublev smashed his racket, but he was harming himself. He's just it's not like the same person that we know and love that we see on the court. It's almost like an alternate ego or something.
100%. Yeah. Can't agree
Sad to
more.
see just like the implosion of a player.
Yeah. 100%. How about bet of the week? What'd you go for here?
So I took a pretty boring bet this week. I took Tommy Paul covering 2.5 sets against Zverev. So basically, he just needs to win a set, and those odds are minus 275. I think the lines were pretty lopsided this week as far as, the favorites were really favorite, and I didn't see any arbitrage where an underdog might get it. So, I'm just going with this because I think Tommy will at least win a set.
I think it's a solid bet. I think honestly, minus 275 is kind of a bummer on those odds, just because it's not the greatest payout. But still, I think it's a reasonable bet. I think Tommy Paul can definitely get a set off of Zverev. I went for a little bit more of an underdog. I went with Sonego plus 240 over Shelton, like I said earlier. And I just think Sonego is going to be playing like it's the last match of his life because it's probably the biggest match of his career. It's easily his best chance he'll probably ever have to make a slam semifinal. And I think there's a chance that Shelton discounts him because he's the higher ranked player and he's like, oh, Sonego got a really easy run to make it here. So I think all those could combine and see Sonego play the match of his life. I think Shelton is the better player, but I think Sonego definitely has a decent chance.
Definitely. I think as long as he, plays well in his return game and like can neutralize that Shelton serve, I think once they get to even in a rally, like Sonego has maybe not the upper hand, but at least he's consistent enough to force Shelton to, try to hit bigger than he does.
Yeah, and it's one of those times where you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe in a slam, Sonego has a better chance because with Shelton playing such an explosive game, it's like as the match drags on, he kind of loses a little bit of that like power in his serve, power in his forehand, just a little bit of the edge off that could maybe help Sonego.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of get sloppy too.
100%. But anyway, how about a match of the week?
Match of the week. So I went with Runa outlasting Kecmanovic in 5 sets. I think it's nice to see Runa back to kind of his winning ways. Like, yeah, sure, he didn't make it to the quarters, but at least we're seeing him win multiple rounds in a slam. And also, I love this match because it showed Runa's tenacity. He fought through the cramps, through fatigue. It was just something that usually with Runa, you kind of see him tend to give up or at least kind of fade out in these. But, he's maturing, he's getting older. So about the match, Kecmanovic, he took the first set in a breaker. Then they alternated sets, win loss, and then in the fifth, Runa won. He took it 6-4, and he just collapsed to the ground as if he had won the final. And I love seeing these because it shows the emotion and like the roller coaster that these players are going through the match, and like how much it meant to them. So I love seeing that, especially Runa, because it shows that he's back, he cares. um, it was a battle. This match was like a grueling, you know, physical, just tough condition type of tennis match that you see like almost like a slugfest, like two boxers going at it. And then I heard Runa say after the match that he had to change up his playing style because after the cramps, he was trying to end points early. He had to kind of like play aggressively. And you got to see that too with his blistering forehands, like absolutely just ripping winners because he had to, like he couldn't sustain the long rallies anymore.
Yeah. And I think he almost tried to do the opposite in his next match with Center, where like he's trying to actually extend the points. But yeah, it's interesting to see how he's able to change up his strategy and how he's able to deal with these tough 5 set matches now.
Yeah, it was strange. Speaking of that center match too, so Sinner took the medical timeout, and then Runa took one at like 5-3 in the third set when he was down. And I heard the commentator say this, and it was really late at night, so I was kind of like dozing in and out. But the commentator said either Runa is like actually hurt and he needs his cramps rubbed out on his knee, or he's just made the biggest tactical blunder of his career. And I'm just wondering why they would say tactical blunder there.
Well, I think maybe their thought is this: he's going, "Hey, Sinner, you took this medical timeout, uh, and in response, I'm going to take this timeout because I think that it's unfair that you took yours."
Yeah.
I think they're saying it's a blunder because Sinner was very clearly dealing with some physical difficulties. And they're saying, hey, yeah, you may be down in this, but you want to keep the pressure on.
Hmm.
Don't let up. Don't give Sinner a chance to kind of recover. And whether or not he had this issue, he gave Sinner the chance to recover and close out the set and then close out the match.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Because I thought he maybe was trying to ice Sinner. Like Sinner had to serve out the match. Maybe if he got him cold or something, it might have worked. I think Sinner's first serves were pretty bad, at least his percentage of
Yeah.
that game. So who knows? He did win it like to love though.
Yeah, I don't think he was going to ice him because I don't think Sinner's going to be worried about that pressure. So I
Yeah,
think that's maybe
yeah,
part of the why it was a tactical blunder.
yeah. All right, how about you? What was your match of the week?
I went with the Draper defeating Vukic in 5. So like I said earlier, it was a third straight 5 setter for Draper. So it kind of makes sense that he retired versus Alcaraz. Was kind of an odd match here with a ton of breaks in the first set. Actually, Draper got broken in the first game. Was trailing for most of it, then ended up getting 2 breaks back at the end and taking the set. Then immediately went to the next set and went down 5-0. So essentially just was completely dominated the second set, ended up losing at 6-2. So got a little bit of momentum back at the end. Then in the third set, he got broken real late, lost at 7-5. And then in the fourth set was kind of interesting because it was tense. There was a lot of break points, but no breaks. Ended up going Draper's way by 1 mini break in the tiebreak. So very, very close fourth set. Draper just gets it done. And then you have a wild fifth set where Draper goes up a break, almost goes up a second break, but fails to convert, and then immediately gets broken back. It ends up going to a match tiebreak where Draper takes the lead, Vukic takes the lead, goes back to even, and then in the end, Draper takes it back at the end and closes out 10-8. So felt like the match could have gone either way a bunch of times and ended up being Draper's match. So just an interesting one to watch where it could have very easily gone to either guy.
Yeah, big props to Draper here because Vukic is an Aussie and he's playing in that hostile home environment. And in a tense match, I feel like that can swing like the outcome sometimes.
100%. Yeah. If you have all the fans going against you
Yeah,
and it's like the fifth set, you're
yeah,
exhausted.
yeah.
But I think he probably earned their respect by the end of the
Right,
match.
right. Some people feed into it too.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.